All right. Welcome to Everyday Money Matters on Lagos Talks 91.3 FM, your premier talk radio station. My name is Adu, and they call me the suave man with the smooth voice. And I'm here with a very, very scholarlistic team, as always, from the money team. And this is Everyday Money Matters, and I do this every Wednesday from 7:30 to 8 o'clock with facilitation from our friends at Nairametrics. And today I am joined by Olumide Adeshina. Hi, Olumide. Good morning to you. Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you, Adu. Good to be on the show again.
Yeah, good to have you here.
Had a nice holiday.
New Year celebration, right? Well, for us, we're always working on New Year's Day, so hey, it wasn't so celebratory, as it were.
Yeah, the same here too. We are always on most times of the.
I know, right? Anyway, good to have you here, Olumide, and hopefully we'll be joined by other individuals along the course of the show. But of course, as always, the show is not complete without you joining the conversation, telling us about the questions that you may have, and how it is that we can weigh in and answer some of these questions. So you can join by telling us your questions on the WhatsApp platform of the station, and that's 0809-234-5913, 0809-234-5913. And also, you can join us by sending your questions to us on Twitter at Lagos Talks 913. So let's get into the conversation. So, Omide, well, it's a new year. A lot of people have New Year goals in terms of what they're going to be saving, what they're going to be earning, what they're going to be investing. And I know a lot of people will have a lot of questions. So let's just dive into some of the questions that have been sent to us, shall we? First question here is something regarding 2021. So I'll take this as the first question. It says, good morning, money team. What investments will give me sizable returns in 2021? So I'm sure this person is trying to prepare for their New Year resolution or something, and they'd like to know. So, Olumide, what investments will give this individual sizable returns in the year 2021?
Yeah, good question. As a Nigerian, you can look at three trending assets right now. On the Nigerian stock market, for example, 2020 was one of the best year for Nigerian equities as they returned 50.50% to investors, and they ranked the best performing in the world. And presently, at the first trading session of the year, was rallying up, just recent price correction. So I recommend tier two banks are looking good, though there was recent sell-off due to some little dust in the air. But I think when that settle, tier two banks look decent. Don't forget that we have stocks like FCMB that is being ranked as one of the best performing bank stocks and still trading at less than 3 naira. So that's a good stock. We also have a stock like Nimet that has outperformed more than 260% in 2020. And the stock looks like it's going to rally higher because we are still in an era of COVID-19. And you understand that people keep using drugs and other health equipment in supporting their health. So I think that's a good stock too. Then also look at the industrials to see that Dangote stock is rallying high. In fact, it broke above the 200 million naira benchmark. So I think that's another good side. So then looking at cryptos, of course, in the news, just as we spoke, Bitcoin broke above $35,000. And just this year, if you look at in terms of annualized return, that's over more than 3 million percent. That's to tell you that that's one of the best performing financial assets. So across board, there are a lot of trendy cryptos that you can invest in. Then you should also look at the debt market to the FGN 30-year bond is moving over 60% return. Last year at 2020. So you could go through that channel by that we are not retail investors are not allowed to invest in those kind of instruments. You can go through investment banks like Stanbic, Veritas, Afrivest, where you can buy bond exchange ETFs. and you can be sure you get good return on your money. So it depends on, first of all, it depends on what assets you're looking at. It depends on your capital, and it depends on your risk as well. So these are the trendy assets for now.
Okay. Someone would like to know the health stock you mentioned earlier. Was it Nimet, right?
Yeah, Nimet. Yeah, another good stock is 15. Me and Baker is another good one. Me and Baker over about 85% in 2020, and the stock too shows some good potential. In fact, I weigh my top picks for 2021 health stocks because their fundamentals are still strong and their profit outlook is still very high. And we are entering the earnings season very soon, so it's better to buy additives at the lows and position your portfolio towards those areas.
Right. So speaking of, so there are a couple of questions here who seem to be asking similar things. So I think I'm just going to loop them up together so it's easier. You can just answer them in one stretch. And just to mention again, if you're listening and you want to ask a question, particularly regarding money matters, please do so. Go to our Lagos Talks WhatsApp platform. That's 0809 234 5913 to get your questions across. So two people asking two different questions. So I'll loop them together, Olumide. First one is, I'm new to investing. And the person says, I'm sure you get this a lot. Where can I invest and put my money? Okay, that's one person's question. Now, the second question I'm going to loop that in is, considering that you just spoke about Bitcoins not so long ago, person says, hello, money team. Has Bitcoin become institutional with many investors adopting it? The person goes on to say, I personally feel it is following the general market trend now. If this is the case, what is the real advantage of investing in Bitcoin? So I think you can answer the two questions together. The person who's new to investing and asking where they can put their money, and then the person asking for the real advantage of Bitcoin if it has now become.
Like I said earlier, I analyzed the 20 financial assets that are moving around the world. You can look at US stocks. US stocks are still stocks to beat to. Don't forget that we are in some weeks' time, we are having a new president that has promised to support the economy by unprecedented stimulus packages, and that will, of course, lead to asset bubble in many assets. And you can see that renewable assets like Tesla, Nino are doing very well. And this is because a lot of the Democratic parties looking at the Democrats, they are looking at investing more in renewables and going away from fossils because they are trying to fight in the non-renewables like methane and fossils oil. So those kind of stocks would really trend in ahead if you look at just about positioning, because Tesla is already moving out, is already looking expensive to buy. So this now should look at renewable assets across spectrum. Also, stocks that are like tech to trend because people are sitting more at home, and particularly Apple stock. A lot of people now are looking at buying more iPhones, buying more MacBooks, and the stock is looking cheap when you compare to its other contemporaries like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. And with the assets they have, the cash over about $250 billion in their bank, people are saying that the stock has a matter of more upside. They just need to declare a dividend or share buyback to rally higher. So that's a good stock. And if you come back home, like I said, tier two banks are my favorite and industrial stocks based on the fact that tier two banks have not really gotten to their record high, and they're showing good growth with management. If you look at, for example, if you look at Sterling, what Sulaiman is doing at Sterling Bank is unprecedented, and with the reforms that which the bank is going to digitalize, shows that the products they are offering beats a lot. So I think that's a good stock, and it's trading less than $2. So I think that's something every Nigerian can afford. And if you look at the industrials, Nestle, Dangote also shows Boa Cement also showing good promise. So these are stocks that I also look at. They are still not bad to own. Then if you then going on board the crypto market, Bitcoin, yeah. The difference, what's happening in Bitcoin market is two narratives. First of all, 10 years ago, sorry, Bitcoin some days ago was doing its 12th birthday. That means 12 years ago, Bitcoin was created, and the asset was had a finished supply, meaning that about 21 million Bitcoin will ever be produced. And presently, we have just about 18.9 in circulation. And out of that 18.9 in circulation, about 4 million Bitcoins have been lost forever, meaning that we have 4.4 left. So really what happened was that if you look at their white paper and the fundamentals, it shows that it, it was called a super currency just because it has decentralized property, meaning that no government institution control the printing, and it has a, like I said, a finished supply. So, and it got interesting because as more and more Bitcoin kept coming out, it became difficult to produce. And like I said, 2.23 million is left. So meaning that it's going to take almost a century for that to be completed. And institutional investors started trooping in when they saw the amount of inflationary moves done by global central banks. Don't forget that one of the things investors are always fighting against is the depreciation of their assets. So apart from moving their funds into gold, they saw Bitcoin as another viable asset. So when the price broke around $20 around November, that was a great signal for institutional investors. And I recently broke the news about a listed um, American firm going into the Bitcoin buying spree, and they've already invested about $1.24 billion into Bitcoin. And to tell you how profitable it is, just today, their profit is standing about over 1.2 billion, and that's even telling you that they're making more money than their business operations together. And that's because a lot of leading financial brands like Portugal, the biggest uh, asset management firm, that's BlackRock, which have assets of over $7 trillion coming into the Bitcoin market, is already tells you more that this asset has already gained so much credibility. Then you also have Mass Mutual, an 18th century insurance firm, coming into Bitcoin to say, disclosing that they're going to make some bargains. And then not forgetting buying billions worth of Bitcoin. So with the fixed amount of coins available, retail investors are left jointly. And one key fundamental to I want to mention is that most of Bitcoin holders are refusing to sell. So the ones available, like about 78% in circulation, are not for sale. Those investors are not willing to sell at any price because these guys are taking the view that Bitcoin might get to $100,000. So the 22% left, you understand market forces. When the demand is higher than the supply, the price will definitely. So that's why we're not surprised the price over at $35. But one of the things I want retail investors to understand is that there's also risk in the market because the market is heavily unregulated, meaning that there's no regulatory oversight function. So sometimes we have a lot of malpractices called like pump and dump, where investors will pump at a price just to make profit and sell when that price gets so hurting other investors. And it happened 4 days ago when Bitcoin from $33,000 lost about $7,000, and some traders lost about $190 million just a few minutes. So it's I miss the fact that it's a very profitable asset. It's an asset that not suitable for retail investors, especially those that are looking for short-term gains. So if you're investing in Bitcoin, you should look at you have a long-term price pattern view. Now that Bitcoin has broken the $35,000 mark, the next resistance level will be the 40. If it breaks to 40, then it's within reach of 45 to $50,000. And once it breaks 50, I don't think Bitcoin will come down to 20 again because a lot of institutional investors are increasing their buying pressure, and like I said, they're refusing to sell.
Wow, that sounds really interesting to hear that Bitcoin has really evolved into this. Initially, a couple of years back, a lot of people were very skeptical about it, saying, something that's intangible. How can you invest in intangible assets, etc., etc. But hey, the world is changing as we know it. So certain things are going to have to change as well. Okay. Another question here is, hello, money team. I have been thinking about starting a business in financial services. The question then is, how can I raise funds? So pretty much funding for business, but this person's business is in financial services. What are the options?
Okay. Good question again. One of the things the listener needs to understand is that the financial industry is heavily regulated. So if you are looking at something to sell to the public, for example, I advise you go to the Security Exchange Commission for license. For example, if you are offering you want to be an hedge fund, you want to be an investment advisor for clients across the Nigerian ecosystem, you need Security Exchange Commission, and that doesn't come cheap. You also need to have a strong evidence of strong background in finance, meaning that you must have studied accounting, other banking and finance, other financial related courses, and shown your expertise in that field for you to get that kind of license. Also, for if you've had experience and you've had exposure in that industry, raising funds becomes more easy in the terms that you can always raise funds from your previous firms. You can also raise funds from colleagues and venture capitals, and that's how many financial firms start. So I think the narrative is what he has on the table and what he can use to get that.
All right. So you have to look at your skill sets, your connections. Are there places where he can like maybe borrow money or something?
Yeah, like I said, just because it depends on his personality. For example, if a successful treasury banker at Zenith Bank or GT, for example, wants to start a financial service, it will be much easier for him because he has a track record and is coming from a credible institution. So the narrative is that you would rather raise funds cheaper from friends, family, his employers, than going through high percentage.
High interest rates
Yeah.
loan facilities. Okay. Olumide, here's another question for you. This one says, "Good morning. Please, what business or investment can I put my money to? About 100,000 naira, because it's been in the bank for over a year." This is from a person named Tessie.
Okay. Good question. Another thing is like 100,000 naira doesn't seem like a lot of money now because if you look at it in dollar terms, that's about $220. I advise the person to invest more in our own intellectual capacity. Investment is not really all about making money. Sometimes I think one of the things that listeners needs to understand is that when you invest in certain things, you're also getting informed, and it helps. And we were talking about the crypto trend. She can go for a lot of courses and like on Coursera, Udemy, and learn things about blockchain. And you'll be surprised at what you can use those skills to get. And don't forget now that the highest paying industry now in Nigeria is no more the banking industry, it's the crypto industry. An average crypto employee earns about $1,000, and most of these guys learn most of these things on the internet. So the thing is that you can use the information age to get a lot. So I advise that instead of you to put that cash into investments that might be degraded over time, or you might lose because of the amount involved. She might possibly lose almost everything. I advise her to go into intellectual education and learning about things that will help her personally.
No, incredible. What about her considering the tier two banks that you were talking about earlier? Is that also a viable option for that?
Yeah, it's a viable option, but because of our capital, you see, one of the things that you need to understand is that there are certain investments that are not suitable for those that earn certain amount of funds because you need to understand that the assets, though they show so much promising, but we need to also consider the drawdowns just in case the narrative change. You understand? So that was why I didn't recommend for that kind of person that earn that amount of money. For you to invest in Nigerian stock market, I usually advise investors to have at least earnings of above $500, meaning that you should be earning around 200,000 monthly, so that you can also do that because you can't pour all your income into investment. It literally doesn't make any sense.
Okay, someone here by the name of Emeka is also asking another question, but I think you've kind of answered it prior to this time, but let me just read it. Maybe there might be one or two things you might still want to share. It says, good morning, Adu and the morning team. It says, how can one improve his or her financial status? Now, the question is from 100,000 to 1 million or more this year. Now it says, preferably which business sector is going to strive most in 2021 based on current economic indices. I think you've already mentioned that, but I don't know if there's one or two things I just want to quickly add.
Like we said earlier, she can, based on the fact that we're in an era of COVID-19 where she can learn apprenticeship skills physically, you can go remotely through your laptop or phone and invest on educational courses. There's so much courses trending around the world now, and it's just to tell you that you shouldn't just look at putting your capital in just investment assets. You can also invest in your intellectual skills, and I believe that even gives you far better return. If you want to look at results, look at Paystack recently that was acquired for about $200 million. These guys invested in their intellectual skills. They had no financial background. It was just computing, and you can see they became the juggernauts in the financial industry. So, investing in intellectual skills can give you an exponential return. It's just that it doesn't come cheap. It takes a lot of discipline and perseverance.
Okay. Okwayemi is joining us still. Says, what's your outlook for 2021 on the global scale, considering the new president for the US, the increased dominance of China, and EU still dealing with post-Brexit and, of course, COVID-19? The question then goes to say, do you still see the gold and the US dollar still having the safe haven status they currently have with Bitcoin on the scene? And then the question was, what can investors do to position themselves better for the year? So I think the focus now is the safe haven investment, should I say, conduits, gold and the dollar.
Yeah, my outlook for the year is the same. And the fact that I was just waiting for the result coming from the US runoff in Georgia, meaning that if, for example, the Democrats hold the Senate because they're presently holding the House and the presidency, it means that we are going to have unprecedented stimulus packages, and that will mean that the inflationary assets will reach record high. Don't forget that the world's largest economy has a debt to GDP of 130%, meaning that that will have pressure on the dollar in the long term. I don't think the dollar and gold are enjoying the safe haven status like before. Just looking at Bitcoin now, that has become the favorite, and it has shown by the way institutional investors are pouring funds into that asset. Looking at, but I don't think it will weaken America's dominance in the global economy based on key fundamentals. You look at the companies that come out from these countries, you become then you wonder how they're going to lose that dominance. Amazon is already at 1.63 trillion market cap. Google is over $1 trillion. Apple is, of course, the most valuable company in the world with $2 trillion. And these people have good product that is used all over the world. So I think their dominance would continue to grow. And since that we are in an era of more regulation, because the Democrat parties are known for regulation, we see that there's going to be some price correction in the crypto market. So Bitcoin, as it's going up, might come a bit lower if its candidates like Janet Yellen, that is supposed to be the next Treasury, U.S. Secretary of Treasury, she's known for regulations, and it means that certain assets might have price correction. But for gold, I don't see gold breaking below $1,500. Gold presently is trading above 194 $1,940, meaning that there is still more upside for gold. And many of us were caught unawares when gold broke the post September 11 record high. So I think gold assets will still have shining, still blink across investors. But stocks, I think the US stock market is still on a bullish run. I think it's having one of the bullish cycle. This year will be the 13th year bullish cycle. So I think experts are still anticipating that with the amount of money trickling into financial markets, there's still going to be more upside for stocks. But albeit the fact is that what is scaring people a lot is the mutant COVID-19 virus. Don't forget that now we have a second wave, and some people even call it a third wave. And in spite of the fact that we have COVID-19 vaccines across market spectrum, it seems not to be subsiding, because I think the virus has super length from its environment and persistence in adapting, and that is why now you can see more cases in Nigeria that had lower in the first wave. So I think COVID-19 is also going to be an issue. Then if you look at the crude oil market, crude oil presently is over at $53 based on the fact that OPEC is trying to support prices. But my concern is that how long will OPEC be willing to support price? Because I think it took a cost, and a country like Nigeria that is complaining about the quota cuts is affecting its revenue. I think oil prices might be under pressure in mid-quarter. But for China dominance in the world play, I think China has come to stay in global trade, taking into account that China is one of the highest exporting nations in the world. And I don't see that changing in future. But I think one of the shortfalls they have is their political system, at which most of their elites prefer the American system. So you see at times that their billionaires trickle to the West. So on the long term, I think it's still going to be the same status quo across market spectrum.
Okay, so finally, just like 1 minute, this person is asking, do you have any investment advice for me to build enough wealth for my children in 10 to 15 years? So this person is asking very quickly for like shall I say 10 to 15 year plan?
Basically, depending on your asset class and you're looking at and your age, but usually for long term, those kind of investments, I look at IPOs. I buy into IPOs for long term environment, and because they give you financial return. For example, if you have bought Apple share in 1976, now it's worth about $27,000. If you had bought Google share 2004, you'll be moving over $30,000 return. So these are just to tell you that one of the key investments for long term, you look at the initial public offer. Then if you don't have those kind of funds, you can also look at Nigerian stocks, dividend stocks like the tier one banks. They are good for long term. Apart from the fact that they appreciate consistently, they also give consistent dividends. So you can also have earnings on dividend. And surprisingly, their dividend yields sometimes often outmatch inflation. So you're sure that your wealth will not be eroded doing those kind of investments.
Okay. Well, thank you, Olumide. I'm sure that maybe next week we might still be able to get more thoughts on this, these questions and more. But thank you for your time, and it was great speaking with you today. Okay.
Thank you, Adu. Yeah, it's good to see you.
And Happy New Year once again. All right.